For years, Tim Ballard has been championed as a modern-day superhero.
The first time I saw one of the kids from the video, and it changed my life.
He was the face of Operation Underground Railroad, a movement that inspired hope around the world by rescuing children from human traffickers. However, Ballard's crusade to save innocent lives has always hidden a darker secret.
Oh, I think he's a pathological liar.
Beneath the accolades and the applause, a dark storm has been brewing.
I mean, I can't find a time that he's told the truth about anything.
Shocking allegations of sexual misconduct have surfaced, casting a shadow over his once unquestioned reputation. I am host Sarah James McLaughlin, and in this new season of The Opportunist, we explore the rise and the fall of Tim Ballard. Join us this October for Tim Ballard, Unmasking a Hero. Subscribe to a new season of The Opportunist now, wherever you get your podcasts.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 390 of the True Crime All the Time Unsolved podcast. I'm Mike Ferguson, and with me, as always, is my partner in true crime, Mike Gibson. Gibby, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing okay. How about you?
Doing great, man. I'm having a really good week.
Yeah, well, it's good. You should be.
I should, shouldn't I?
Yeah, because you are who you are.
Okay, I like that.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and give our Patreon shout-outs. Krista Taylor jumped out at her highest level.
What's going on, Taylor?
Mr. Beaster.
What's happening, mister?
MBB.
Hey, B.
Laura.
Well, good old Laura.
Alicia Trapp.
Hey, Trapp from the Von Traps.
Kimberly Kinsey.
Hey, Kinsley.
Bianca.
What's happening, Bianca?
Melissa Cabin.
Hey, Melissa.
David Sisitka.
That's easy for you to say. What's going on, David?
It's not, and I'm not even sure I hit it correctly. We had Vicky.
Hey, Vicky.
Gloria Sleeper.
Well, thanks, Sleeper.
And last but not least, Laura Felker.
Well, hi, Laura.
Then if we go back into the vault, this week we selected Andrew Greenwell.
Well, thanks a lot, Andrew.
Yeah, we appreciate the new Patreon support, the continued support. We also had a great PayPal donation from Charles Thompson.
Well, thanks, Mr. Thompson.
So thanks to everyone. Gibbs, right now, we have a new episode out on True Crime All the Time, where we're talking about Scarlett Jenkinson and Eddie Ratcliffe. These were two high schoolers, 15-year-olds, who, kind of developed a kill list.
They did.
And then focused in on who they thought would be the easiest to kill and carried it out. But the person they picked thought that Scarlett was their friend. And, there's just some really interesting, but also very troubling details to this one.
For me, it was very shocking.
Yeah, and it's a very horrendous murder.
When you add their age in there, that really got me.
And the reasons behind it.
Yeah.
All right, buddy, are you ready to get into this episode of True Crime All the Time Unsolved?
Hey, I'm ready.
We're talking about the murder of Sheree Magaro. Sheree Magaro was last seen alive leaving her fiancé's home in Kennedyville, Maryland, ahead of a blizzard. She had plans to return to her home in Pennsylvania, but Sheree was never seen again. Her car was found abandoned in a field the following morning. Inside the vehicle was evidence of a brutal attack, but Sheree was nowhere to be found. Sheree Magaro has been declared legally dead for decades, and the police feel certain she was a victim of a homicide, but her body has never been found. Sheree Magaro was born on October 23rd, 1956. She was just 30 years old when she went missing. According to the Charlie Project, Sheree taught modeling for a few years after high school graduation. She then got a job with Control Data Corp, a company that manufactured lottery machines. Sheree worked in the automated wagering division, which operated games for the Pennsylvania Lottery. She worked there for about 9 years and was well liked by her coworkers.
There's some similarities here between her and you, because I know that you taught modeling for a few years after you graduated. And then I also know that you also, I don't know if it was for a company, but you dabbled in some lottery style machine gambling things.
Slash schemes.
Yes.
Yeah. So I taught modeling and you did nude modeling, which is, kind of how we have a connection. We didn't know each other at that time, but
those who
later found out that you did quite a bit of nude modeling.
Those who can do, those who can't don't
teach. That was actually a really good one. But I was sitting here thinking, for some reason in my mind, I thought that it was Pennsylvania where they had the big lottery scheme where a bunch of people fixed the lottery. I could be wrong about that.
Oh, I think you might be right.
Going back a number of years, like they weighted the ping pong balls, or they did something with the ping pong balls to make them come out the way they wanted them to.
Make sure those certain numbers always rolled.
Yeah. I just don't remember the specifics. Sheree married Michael Magaro in 1982. They had a son named Tony, who was 4 when Sheree went missing. Sheree and Michael divorced a few years later. By 1987, Sheree and Tony were living at the Willow Farms Village Mobile Home Park in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania.
You ever been to Harrisburg?
I do not believe I have, but isn't Harrisburg the capital of Pennsylvania?
Well, I am Mensa, so of course it is.
I don't know why I remember stuff like that. I remember strange trivia like things.
Yeah.
I remember memorizing all the capitals like when I was little.
When you did the capital races at school?
And somehow I retained that type of information. I've been to Hershey, Pennsylvania. I've been to
Pittsburgh. I know that.
Oh, Pittsburgh. Yeah, a lot. You and I have. But I've also been to Gettysburg.
Oh, did you go to Gettysburg?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I did that when I was pretty young. And that was one of my favorite trips.
Really?
Which you wouldn't think it would be for a youngster, but I've always been fascinated with history and things like that.
Did you go to Philly?
I don't think I've ever been to Philly.
I know you like cheesesteaks.
I do like cheesesteaks.
Assumed you went there and got the real ones.
So it's 1987, right? Sheree and her son are living in this mobile home park. Sheree and Tony visited her parents often. Sheree's mother, Mary Grace Youts, described her as vivacious, outgoing, and friendly. Sheree's neighbors, Miriam and Guy Bretz, told the Patriot News that she was like a daughter to them. They spent a lot of time with Sheree and her son in the evenings. Miriam told the Patriot News that Sheree was devoted to her little boy. There couldn't have been a better mother. That's what she said.
Well, that says a lot.
It does. It was also said that she was a kind neighbor. In the winter months, she shoveled snow off the couple's car without being asked.
Well, there's something you don't really see a lot of today. Neighbors doing things for other neighbors.
How would you know? You live in an apartment.
Well, I did.
Oh, you did? Yeah, up until recently. And now I don't even know if you have neighbors who are all that close. I think you're just going by me and how I treat my neighbor.
Exactly.
But to me, this shows someone's character. You know, it's easy to kind of do things when people are watching, or you're being asked to do something, or you know you're going to get something out of it.
Yeah.
But to go out of your way to help someone just out of the goodness of your heart, I really do think that shows you a lot about Sheree's character. You know, she was described as a very friendly person, but she was also guarded and didn't trust easily. And I'll be honest with you, I don't think that's a bad thing.
It's not a bad thing.
It's great to be friendly. But at the same time, I do believe to a certain degree, everyone needs to be a little guarded, right? You can't just give away your trust blindly, because you could get taken advantage of or bad things could happen.
So in this room, who do you think trusts too soon? Me or you?
Who in this room? You're looking around like there are other people here. and there's no one else in the studio. I know it's definitely not me.
Yeah.
Because I trust very few people in my life.
That is spot on.
So I don't know that you're like too trusting. I just know that you're probably more trusting than I am.
Yes. Yeah.
A professional associate of Sheree said that Tony had an outgoing, friendly personality that he got from his mother. According to the Patriot News, she described Sheree as a fine lady, always concerned about her son's social and emotional adjustment and condition.
Those are important things to consider.
Yeah, I mean, obviously they're interviewing a lot of people who knew Sheree, and she's being talked about in very glowing terms. For about 13 months, Sheree had been in a relationship with a man named Frank Brown. The Charlie Project reports that they were engaged. Frank lived in Maryland, so they normally spent their weekends at each other's homes. Tony was often with them, and he had a good relationship with Frank.
Well, that's important.
It is important. This was something that I experienced. I've said it before. My parents divorced when I was, 6, 7 years old.
Yeah.
And it wasn't all that long before I had a stepmom, a stepdad, and I have had and still do have a great relationship with both of them. But it wasn't all peaches and cream all the time.
Well, no, partly because you were not a good kid.
I was not. Sheree drove to Frank's house in Kennedyville, Maryland on Saturday, February 21st, 1987. She arrived around 1 p.m. She left her son with her mother. Sheree was last seen alive leaving Frank's house on the night of February 22nd. She was driving her gray four-door 1976 Ford Torino.
Oh, Torino.
You ever see that movie Grand Torino?
I did.
With Clint Eastwood?
Pretty good flick.
It is. It is. I think another one he's directed. One of the hundreds of movies that he's directed and starred in. Both, it seems like. That evening, a snowstorm was forming in the area. Forecasters predicted that it would be a major storm. Sheree had planned to spend the night with Frank and leave for work early on the morning of the 23rd, but she decided to go home because the snow was getting worse and she worried she wouldn't be able to get to work. Kennedyville, Maryland is about 126 miles from Harrisburg, Pennsylvania.
So about a little bit more than a 2-hour drive in normal conditions.
Yes. And I think some people could do that, right? Get up in the morning, make a 2-hour drive to work. But if a blizzard's coming in, I might want to be a lot closer to home if I do have to drive into work.
Yeah. And I remember one of the articles I read during the research, this storm produced 18 inches of snow.
Which is quite a bit.
That's quite a bit.
That's quite a bit of snow. Sheree called her mother at 9:10 p.m. According to the Cecil Daily, Mary Grace Youth said about their conversation, she called me and told me she was leaving because it was snowing. I told her, don't come home because you will be traveling with the storm. She said she had to come home to go to work. She pleaded with Sheree not to drive home and said she was not going to beat the storm. Sheree promised to be careful and said she didn't expect any problems on her way home. Well, let's face it. If your plan is to leave, then obviously you don't expect there to be any problems.
Right.
But a severe weather event, especially one that maybe pops up quicker than the meteorologists said it would, can cause a lot of problems.
Sure can.
In a 2-hour drive.
When my mom was younger, and I was driving, she would call me for these big storms, was concerned and like, make sure you call me when you get home. I want to make sure you got home safe. And these were big storms.
Yeah, as moms do. And they don't care if you're 22, 42, 52.
They don't.
They don't.
But what was funny as she got older, much older, even if it was this, might get an inch of snow, she'd be calling me, honey, make sure you call me. And make sure you got home okay. I'd be like, Mom, it's just a dusting. It's an itch.
Well, here's the one thing that I have learned getting older is that it seems like parents and grandparents, the older they get, the more worried they get.
Oh, yeah.
Which seems strange because you as the child are now in your 40s, 50s, nearing 60. You've been through a little bit.
Yeah.
You know a little bit.
A little bit.
I think you can take care of yourself,
That's right.
but they're now more worried than ever.
Yeah. Honey, make sure you stop off, get some milk and bread.
Sometimes I think it's because they just don't have a lot going on.
I think that's exactly what it is.
Sheree left her fiance's house around 9:40 p.m. And you mentioned it, Gibbs, but as predicted by forecasters, a severe snowstorm covered the area in about 18 inches of snow. Sheree didn't make it home, and no one received an update from her. At 9:30 a.m. on February 23rd, 1987, Maryland State Trooper Tom Kearns responded to an anonymous call reporting an abandoned car in a field about 100 feet west of Maryland Route 213, 2.5 miles south of the Bohemia River Bridge in Cecil County. The snow in the field was 16 to 18 inches deep, but there were only a couple of inches of snow under the car, which indicated it had been there overnight during the snow. Snowfall had covered any potential footprints or tire tracks.
You know, you think about this, and you know, today's world, we have cell phones, right? You get
Yes, we do.
Yes, we do. You get in the problem today, you pick up the phone and call somebody. 1987, it wasn't like that.
Wasn't happening.
No.
And you know, to take it a little bit further, you know, not only cell phones, but most of us have smartphones.
Yes.
And people can track our whereabouts, our loved ones can. You know, a lot of vehicles today have GPS. Some of them even have alert systems in the event of a crash. None of that in 1987, especially in a Torino, but not in any other car either. But I'm just calling out the Torino.
The Torino.
So this state trooper, Tom Kearns, goes out. He discovered a disturbing crime scene, but no body. Inside Sheree's vehicle, investigators found a large amount of blood, hair, and brain tissue. The interior of the vehicle had been partially burned. Evidence of a flammable fluid was found near the vehicle. According to the Patriot News, hair and brain tissue were found on the right rear door and a bumper jack in the trunk.
The bumper jack.
Well, it makes you think that was the murder weapon.
Yeah.
It also makes you think that this was a very vicious attack. A state trooper later testified that the interior of the car contained such a large amount of blood that it likely resulted in the death of that individual. There was no blood on the ground outside the car. And I think that paints a vivid scene. Now, it's not a nice one.
No, it's not.
But it's very vivid. When you think about the amount of blood that would make someone say, most likely there's no way that this person could have survived. We only have so much blood in our body. And if you lose a certain amount of that, death is pretty much certain.
Right. And this officer is stating that.
In his opinion,
it's a lot of blood.
It's too much blood for somebody to have survived. Testing would later reveal that the blood type was characteristic of Magaro's parents.
Basically saying it's most likely hers.
Yeah. A suitcase was found in the car, and the clothing Sheree was most likely wearing at the time of the attack was also found in the car.
Meaning that she was stripped of it?
At some point, that would be what I would think. But it was definitely clear that a homicide had occurred. According to primary investigator Roger Castle, the medical examiner declared Sheree dead based on the amount of blood and brain matter at the scene. Sheree's official cause of death is listed as blunt force trauma to the head. investigators have not released what kind of weapon they believe was used, which is strange because they found a jack with her brain tissue on it.
Yeah, so you would think it was that, unless somehow she was put in the trunk at one point and somehow
transferred onto it. Yeah. I mean, to me, when I heard that, it seemed pretty obvious that that was most likely the murder weapon. Officers theorized the body might be buried in the snow. So they formed a line and shuffled through it. They didn't find a body, but they did find Sheree's purse, driver's license, and a tube of lipstick about 100 yards from the car. Sheree's purse still contained several expensive pieces of jewelry, but her wallet, which contained cash and credit cards, was missing.
Well, maybe because it's at night, they just missed it.
Yeah, it could be. Now, it doesn't make sense, if you're really searching the purse, to leave the jewelry, but take the cash and credit cards and the wallet. Now, maybe someone thinks there's nothing I can do with this jewelry. Any attempt to fence it or pawn it or something like that could leave a trail. So that could be part of the reasoning.
Yeah. Or it could just be a really big purse and you just grab the wallet and go.
It could be.
Some of these purses that women carry, I mean, there's a lot of things in those purses.
Unlike your fanny pack.
My fanny pack comes in very handy.
I'm not saying it doesn't. It's just not that large.
No. I mean, if it was larger, maybe I'd put my wallet in it, but I kind of like my wallet where I have it.
I mean, you don't have the biggest fanny.
I don't have any fanny
that they make. It was determined that Sheree's car was not abandoned in the field due to mechanical issues. The car was in perfect working condition and had 7 gallons of gas in the tank. This was more than enough to get her to Elkton, Maryland, where she normally stopped for gas. And I think this is an important revelation, right? If there was some type of mechanical failure, could that help explain going off the road into the field?
Yeah.
Maybe. I mean, you could also say, well, it was snowing, it was slippery.
That could have been.
That could have been it. But most likely, if that had happened, someone would have heard from Sheree, or at the very least, they wouldn't have found so much blood and brain matter in the car, but no body.
Right.
Something else had to have happened. Later that day, a Maryland Department of Natural Resources officer driving near the search scene found a bloody men's plaid shirt on the shoulder of Maryland Route 213, about 3/4 of a mile north of the Bohemia River Bridge. The police didn't know if it was connected to the case, but it was sent to the crime lab for analysis and comparison with the evidence found in the car. Now, I'm sure there are bloody shirts, on the side of the road all over the world. But when one is found that close to what people believe is a homicide scene, I think you're going to take that shirt into consideration as possible evidence. And it sounds like they did. Later testing determined the blood on the shirt was characteristic of Sheree's parents.
So there's a connection.
The Maryland State Police began an extensive search of the area and the river to try to find Sheree's body. It was reported that the Department of Natural Resources dragged the river near the bridge and police divers were sent to search the water. On February 25th, the state police announced that their searches had turned up nothing.
And those type of searches are always difficult.
Yeah, I mean, dragging the river. Okay, how big's the river? And what are the chances that just by dragging it, you're going to find it? Now, you've got divers, but how much area can they cover? And are they even in the right area?
Well, that's it.
Also, how freaking cold is that water in Maryland in February?
Pretty damn cold.
I would say so. Eventually, the search stretched into its 5th day. With no new leads, state troopers went door to door along a 25-mile stretch of State Route 213 in Cecil and Kent counties, asking residents if they had seen Sheree. Investigators plan to continue the search and bring in cadaver dogs. In March 1987, state police spokesman Charles Jackson said, per the Patriot News, every day that goes by tends to lessen the likelihood that we will find Miss Magaro alive. It's an ominous statement, but it's a true one. Right? With that amount of blood in the car and the other things that they found, the fact that her clothing was found in the car.
Right.
A person who's seriously wounded, if they're still alive, they're not walking through the snow with no clothes on and surviving for very long. It's just not going to happen.
No, the temperature is way too cold.
And that's if they didn't die from, blood loss or other injuries. So it makes me think, Gibbs, right off the bat, that something terrible happened inside that car, but whoever did that terrible act took the body with them and then, put it somewhere else.
I don't really see another scenario that makes any sense.
Yeah, I don't either. I just can't see a person, walking away from that type of attack and getting very far at all. I think they would have been found very quickly. Jackson said that Sheree was still considered missing, but noted this case has all the makings of a homicide. However, we don't have a victim.
Well, we have covered cases like this in the past, and it makes it very difficult when you don't have a body.
Yeah, it does. Now, it was 1987, not much happening in the way of DNA back then. I think the first case was 85. Most places weren't doing a lot with DNA at that point in time, but still, you'd like to find the body if the person is deceased for two reasons. Maybe you find some evidence on the body, but then also you're able to give that information to the family and they're not left wondering, what's going on. At the time, the police had not disclosed all the evidence found in the vehicle. All the state police would say was there was evidence of a very brutal crime and possibly that more than one person was involved. After the search ended, investigators focused on recreating what they believe happened on the night of the crime. One of Sheree's co-workers told the Patriot News in March that they were working through the stages of grief and wanted to find Sheree to lay her to rest. Another friend of Sheree said the case reminded women in the office they needed to stay alert against crime.
That goes to our own saying, right? Keep your head on a swivel.
Right. And for me, that just doesn't go for women. That should go for everyone. Keep your head on a swivel. Don't be paranoid, but be prepared.
Yes.
I think is the way I look at it. A group called Friends of Sheree Magaro offered a reward up to $20,000 for information. This money was put together by about 40 of Sheree's coworkers and friends.
Wow, impressive.
That's a lot of money.
Especially in 87.
To be put together by 40 people. On March 24th, 1987, the Maryland State Police began circulating composite sketches and descriptions of two men wanted for questioning in connection to Sheree's disappearance.
So maybe getting some traction here.
Well, it's got to be a good sign. They must have received some information that led to the fact that they were looking for two men and that they were able to put together composite sketches. Because, you just can't make those out of thin air. You could, but it's not going to do you any good.
That's right. It's not going to help you.
They had to have come from somewhere, the descriptions. The state police also announced that Sheree was now the presumed victim of a homicide and confirmed that the samples taken from the car matched her blood type. The police revealed that around 11 a.m. on February 23rd, the day Sheree's car was found, a man attempted to use her stolen credit card to purchase a TV set at a Sears in Bel Air, Maryland. Sheree's card was maxed out, so he couldn't buy anything. He left the store when store personnel questioned the transaction. He claimed the card belonged to his wife. He left the card with the clerk. After the clerk saw a news report about Sheree's disappearance, he called his manager, who called the police. So here's where the description comes in, one of them. This man was described as a white male in his 20s with a dark complexion, short black hair, blue or green eyes. He was 5'9" and 160 pounds. He was clean shaven and wearing a leather jacket and dark pants.
Well, it's a lead. I don't know if it's a great lead.
I was going to say it's a pretty good lead. Now, there are a number of ways that this man could have obtained this credit card without being at the crime scene or, being responsible for Sheree's death. Could he have found it on the side of the road and just said, well, I'm going to try it out?
Yeah.
Could he have bought it from someone for, pennies on the dollar? We don't know. The second man wanted for questioning was seen in the field where Sheree's body was found. Several motorists driving along Maryland Route 213 on the night of the snowstorm saw a Ford Mustang with Maryland plates in the field with its hazard lights on. According to the Charlie Project, the hazard lights were a shape used only on models from 1974 to 1978, 1983, and 1987.
So somewhat limiting.
Yeah. As to the year of the Mustang, the Cecil Daily reported that the Mustang had Pennsylvania license plates. A witness saw a man standing next to his car, talking to a woman in a car that resembled Sheree's vehicle. He was described as a white male, between 26 and 30, 5'10", medium build with black or dark brown hair, brown eyes, and a mustache. He was wearing a dark jacket and dark pants.
So the description is kind of similar to the other guy?
Yeah, fairly similar. Unfortunately, it is also similar to a lot of people. 5'10"-ish medium build. Okay. Like a lot of guys would fit that bill. Now, the biggest hindrance in the case was the snowstorm. The roads were mostly deserted, and those who were out driving were focused on getting home, which most likely influenced how much they saw and how detailed their descriptions were. And I'll be honest with you, Gibbs, if I'm driving in the middle of a massive snowstorm, I'm probably not doing a lot of sightseeing off in a field.
No, you probably have your hand squeezing that steering wheel, just concentrating on keeping on the road.
Yeah, I'm white knuckling it, but I'm focused on that and that alone. Authorities have said it's possible that the two sketches depict the same man, since there were similarities in the witness descriptions. You pointed that out. The composite sketches are published on the Charlie Project website, and the two sketches do look somewhat similar. Neither one of them has been identified, and officials do not know for certain if they are connected to Sheree's disappearance.
But I can see how they could be, right? If it's the same guy, his car is out in the field, he takes the wallet. I don't know what he does with the body and all that other stuff, but then he tries to use the car to buy something and finds out that he can't. It could be the same guy.
Oh, I think you can put it together that way. Absolutely. Now, I think you also have to probably make the connection, because someone saw this man talking to a woman standing next to a car that resembled Sheree's. If this is the same man, he's most likely her murderer. On April 1st, 1987, the local papers issued a notice that Sheree's father, Thomas Youts, filed a petition to appoint a permanent trustee for her estate. A judge scheduled a hearing on the petition for May 12th to hear evidence concerning Sheree's absence. Months after Sheree's disappearance, a trash cleanup crew found one of Sheree's credit cards near Whitehall Road, 10 or 11 miles from where her car was found. Authorities searched the area but found nothing else of interest. And, this was, kind of where I was thinking it is possible that somebody not connected with her murder at all kind of stumbled upon her credit cards.
Sure.
One of her credit cards. And then, made the decision that they were going to try to buy a television.
There's bad individuals at all different levels. Credit card fraud, that's lower level, but it's still a bad person for doing it.
Yeah, it's not a great thing to do.
No.
But it pales in comparison to beating a woman in the head with something like a tire iron, killing her, and then disposing of her body somewhere where it can't be found.
Exactly.
Those are two very different things. So could it be the same individual? Yes. Could there have been two different individuals? Yeah, I think you could also make that argument as well. In January 1989, Thomas and Mary Grace Yautz filed a petition for a decree to declare Sheree legally dead as of February 22nd, 1987. The Patriot News covered the case in February 1989. Mary Grace Yautz spoke to the paper about her petition saying, "We have to accept it. We have no choice. The evidence proved she was killed that very night." And as tough as it is to come to that conclusion, it's pretty hard to think that is not what happened.
It's got to be a tough decision for the parents to move forward on something like that.
Yeah, I would say, maybe some of that had something to do with Tony, right? Sheree's son. Maybe some other factors were in play, but according to her mom, they were at a point where they believed she was no longer alive. She also gave an update on her grandson, Tony, saying that he was doing well, but missed his mother. State Trooper Robert Perot said the search was inactive, but they followed up on all leads. He added, "It's just a total mystery. We know she met with foul play. We know she's dead, but investigators still do not know how she died."
That would be very frustrating.
I think there's a lot of frustration for a number of different people in this case, right? Investigators are frustrated because they have evidence of a homicide, but no idea how it happened, who was responsible. And then you have the frustration on the part of Sheree's family, not being able to bring her home, right? Bury her, have a ceremony, lay her to rest. But let's talk about some theories that have been, floated out there. I think the main theory is that the man seen in the field was having car trouble, or at least pretending to have car trouble, and Sheree pulled over to help him, or that Sheree pulled over for some reason and the killer spotted her. There was no evidence someone forced their way into her car. Robert Perot told the Patriot News, "Let's just say that whoever she met, she felt comfortable meeting." Okay, well, what does that mean? Because I go back to, towards the beginning of the episode, when people were describing Sheree, people described her as a very friendly person. Now, they also said she was guarded, she didn't trust easily, but as a very friendly person. If you thought someone was in need, was Sheree the type of person who would have pulled over to see if someone needed help?
Well, yeah, maybe the car was slid off the road or looked like it slid off the road and she wanted to assist. I think we've all been there. We've all done that, right? Pulled over and helped somebody that slid off the road. If they don't look like they're a terrible person.
Yeah, but how do you know by looking at someone?
You really don't,
Unless it's, as we always talk about, Otis Toole or Henry Lee Lucas, and most killers don't look like those guys.
No, they don't.
Now, they don't all look like Ted Bundy either, but I would say by and large, most killers don't look like some type of boogeyman, right? They look like normal, everyday people.
And really, I don't know if you're thinking about, is that person a murderer at that moment? Snowing, roads are in bad condition, you're thinking they probably slid off the darn road. Let me see if they need some help.
Yeah, your first thought is probably not, oh, this is some type of ruse. They're trying to get somebody to pull over. But I just want to go back to this statement. She felt comfortable meeting this person. I don't know what that means. I get it. There was no evidence that someone forced their way into her car. But, if you pull over to try to help somebody, most likely you're going to get out. They're not going to need to force their way into your car. But that doesn't mean you knew the person, you had a comfort level in the person at all. He also said the murder was most likely not committed in the spot where the car was found, and the assault most likely happened at least a quarter mile away. And this does make a lot of sense. I mean, obviously, they're not pulling off into this field, right? If you're going to help somebody, you're not driving your car out into the field. You might pull over on the shoulder. You might walk out into the snow to see if they need help. But how many people are going to drive in this snowstorm out into a field when you're not even sure what's out there?
Yeah, not going to happen.
No. According to Perot, their investigation had mainly involved the elimination of possible suspects. He did not believe the suspect was from Pennsylvania, Sheree's home state. Sheree's ex-husband, Michael Magaro, told the Patriot News, "Sometimes I think they just forget about it and go on to more recent cases. But I think Perot is a pretty good cop, and he is obsessed with the case. He said he'll pursue it for the rest of his life."
Well, there's a lot of cops out there like that.
Yeah, but I think both of these things are true. And I don't know if they forget about it, but more recent cases do come along. Those have to be worked as well.
Sure do.
And there's only so many resources to go around. But I'm with you, Gibbs. I think, there are some cases that detectives will never let go. Even after retirement, we've seen people continue to work on cases that they're not getting paid for. There's really no reason for them to be doing it other than it might be the one that kind of stuck in their craw the most and
haunts them.
Yeah. Sheree Magaro was declared legally dead in May 1989. Unfortunately, news outlets have not done a lot of coverage of this case in recent years. However, the Cecil Daily did publish a detailed article about Sheree's disappearance in 2004 as part of their coverage on cold cases in Cecil County. Primary investigator Roger Castle told the Cecil Daily, "We looked at her stopping to help someone who was disabled, and we got various stories from her family and friends. Some said she would stop and help anyone. Others said she was very cautious and she wouldn't stop."
It's a pretty mixed statement.
Yeah, I think people are giving conflicting, statements on what they think she would do. Now, her mom told the paper that Sheree would have stopped to help someone stranded on the side of the road. She told the paper she would have given anyone a ride. She would have pitied them. And you think about this massive snowstorm that ultimately, dropped 18 inches. Does someone let their guard down a little bit more in a situation like that? And I think it's possible that the answer is yes.
Yeah, I think so. I think where you typically would be more guarded, I think it's just human nature to feel bad for somebody, knowing that they're out in the cold elements, snowing, it's getting later in the day, the night, and you want to see if you can at least get them somewhere safe.
And maybe that same person wouldn't do it on a night where it wasn't, blizzard condition.
Yeah.
Maybe they would drive on by. The Cecil Daily reported that Sheree's ex-husband, Michael Magaro, was a suspect at one point. He and Sheree had been divorced about a year, and Sheree had full custody of their son. Investigator Larry Musil said they had the normal divorce and custody problems. We looked at the ex-husband very hard. but nothing ever came from it.
And we're not surprised with that, right?
No, the ex-husband's going to be looked at. There was at some point in the investigation a thought that there was a car with Pennsylvania plates. Okay. Does that make you more suspicious of the ex? Maybe. But either way, the ex-husband's always going to be looked at.
Yeah.
In a 2004 interview, Michael Magaro said he and Sheree parted on good terms. He worked with the police from the beginning and traveled to the state police barrack to take 2 polygraphs. All right, that says a lot to me.
Yeah, it says the same to me, right?
Whether you believe in polygraphs or not, it makes it seem like this man was very confident. He didn't have anything to do with it, and he was just trying to help the police out. And what's a good way to help them out? Well, rule me out so you can move on to other suspects.
That's right. Use your resources elsewhere.
Michael said, police said whoever killed her, she knew her killer. It was someone from that area. I was in Harrisburg, a good 90 to 100 miles away. What's the motive? Why would I kill her? You can't make sense of something like that. She did nothing wrong. You're never going to get an answer. I feel guilty because if we were still together, she wouldn't have gone down there. And I am still stuck on this kind of thought by police that she knew her killer.
And I just don't know if I buy into that.
Well, I'm not saying it couldn't be true, but I don't know why they keep saying it so definitively.
Kind of like it's isolated. Like it's the only thing that it could have been.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think there are a lot of scenarios, including the one where she pulls over to help someone who appears stranded. That doesn't suggest that she knew her killer at all, to me. Sheree's former fiance is also not considered a suspect per the Charlie Project. And I'm sure he was looked at hard as well. I think as far as motives go, he would have even less of a motive to want Sheree dead than the ex-husband would have, right? There's no divorce. There's no custody battle. There's nothing. There's just a relationship.
I mean, sometimes relationships go bad and
they do, but it's a relationship that seemingly both could walk away from without really any entanglements.
But from what I read, I know that they recently were engaged, so it doesn't sound like it was a relationship on the rocks.
Yeah, it doesn't. One theory is that Sheree's body was dumped at the Bohemia River Bridge, which was being reconstructed at the time of the murder. According to Larry Musil, the police looked into this. He said, there were no tire prints or tracks or anything by the bridge. We took dirt samples and grass samples to see if the car was driven in any other area, but it wasn't. The construction workers looked the best they could. They said she couldn't be in there.
Well, I get it. Hey, it's a construction site. It's one place that you potentially could get rid of a body.
Well, especially depending on what type of construction was going on at the time. Now, I don't know how the construction workers could make a definitive statement that there's no way that she could be in there.
Yeah, hey, no, she's not here. We look really good. Don't worry. She's not here. Trust us, officer. No reason. Don't bring anybody in. We covered it.
Yeah, that sounds strange.
Yeah.
Musil continued, there's a lot of theories that go on whenever we do have a homicide. You speculate and think, could this have happened? If you don't have a body, where is the body? We searched the fields. We searched the woods. We searched the river. We had divers in the river. We had divers in by the bridge. We searched the new construction by the bridge all along the highway from where we found the car up until Elkton. And it does sound like they did a lot of searching and they used, quite a bit of resources to try to find Sheree's body. I think, what's tough for me as we start to wrap this one up is that they have no idea where the murder, assuming this was a murder, took place.
It's true. They don't know.
How far away from where her car was found could the murder have taken place? So you have no body. You don't really know where the murder scene was. You're short on motives.
Yeah.
What you do have is her car and a bloody scene at the car.
In a partially burnt up car.
Yes. Out in the middle of a field, covered in snow. It's a tough case because, when you think about it, there's just not a lot to go on.
No. Well, why were they trying to burn the car up? What was that going to do?
Get rid of evidence is normally my theory on that. But, the one question that I do have is, we talked about the fact that, it's 1987-ish, not a lot in the way of DNA going on, but how much of that evidence did they keep? Did they keep the tire iron? How much of that, if any, has been analyzed using today's technology? Now, it's been a long time, so no certainty that they could get a good sample or not, but this could be a case where they have evidence that has yet to be tested.
That's true.
Either because, it's far down the list, they don't have the resources. There's all kinds of different reasons that could be.
Maybe one day they'll find something that will say, hey, this is the guy that's in those composite. We'll learn more about him. Or maybe it's just some random killer. Maybe it's a serial killer at the time. Maybe she was working in that for that data company that handled the lotto systems. Maybe there's some little dark secret there. Maybe she came across some information she shouldn't have, and someone said, hey, she got that information. We need to do something about that.
It's hard to rule out even some of the more far-fetched things.
Yeah.
Because why rule it out when you have no basis for doing so?
Right.
Over 30 years later, the disappearance of Sheree Magaro remains unsolved. This case is pretty unique because investigators are certain she was murdered, but her body has not been found. And then you have this connection of the two men depicted in the composite sketches. It's uncertain. Are these two different men or two different sketches of the same man? But you'd have to admit that this would be a very strong potential suspect or suspects if it's two different people. One person is seen out by where her car was ultimately found. One person tried to buy a TV with her credit card.
Yeah.
So I do think this is one that, maybe some more will come out on it, depending on, how much evidence were they able to collect? Do they still have it? Is it viable? Right. There's a lot of questions there, a lot of variables that we don't know. What we do know is that, a young mother was killed. I think it's pretty safe to say that this was a homicide, and a very gruesome one at that, that left a very young boy without his mother. And at the age of 4, I just wonder, how many memories does he even have of her? Because that's pretty young.
It is young, but hopefully he has some.
Yeah, and I'm sure they're good memories, the ones that he does have. But if you have any information about the disappearance of Sheree Magaro, you can call the Maryland State Police at 410-653-4200 or email mspccu at msp.state.md.us.
Yeah, it's important, man. Even if you just saw something that night, that could be the key that helps investigators head down another road.
There's no tip too small.
Exactly.
I think that's a pretty good saying. Now, some people might take that one the wrong way, but you know what I mean. So that's it for our episode on Sheree Magaro. We got some voicemails, Gibbs. You want to check those out?
Hey, let's hear them.
Hi, Mike and Gibby. I'm a second-time caller. My name is Sarah. I'm from the Chicago suburbs. I called you when I was doing my first road trip a couple years ago, and I've been listening for, probably about 6 years now. most of my high school and all of my college years. You guys got me through. And I've done so many road trips now, solo, with you guys as my company. So I just wanted to thank you. I'm currently driving a gross distance. So I just wanted to thank you for keeping me company. And I just got to always say that I'm Team T-Cat. I love you guys. I'd love to hear an update on how Gibby's podcast co-host union is going. Just listening to that Boyle podcast. So thanks so much. Keep your head on a swivel. Talk to you later.
All right. We love you too. Thanks for the voicemail. You know, unfortunately, sometimes when people reference things, Gibbs, they're so far back, I can't remember.
You forget when I was going to form a co-host podcast union.
Oh, was that what it was?
We are still in the works.
Membership is currently at 1.
I think I got the captain on board.
And it's been a very slow process.
We are slowly growing.
Oh.
Hey, Mike, I know that you're the one that listens to these voicemails or whatever they're called. So, dang it, gotta put my seatbelt on. Sorry about that. Anyway, I know you're the one that listens to the messages. So, I just was listening to the one about the husband and wife grappling, and I would like to issue a challenge to you. The next time Gibby is due to come over to record and have dinner, I would love it if you would stage a grappling match between you and your wife, and it would be much appreciated if you would record that. It's going to be fake. I wonder if your wife will go along with it. This is a challenge should you decide to take it, period. That sounded way better in my head when I was thinking about calling. Anyway, love you guys. Bye.
So there's a little bit of a Mission Impossible there. Should you accept to
take this
challenge? So probably no surprise, but no, my wife did not go for that when I mentioned it to her. So Gibby came over, ate. There was no staged grappling match.
No, she just knows if you're trying to, that's just your way of getting frisky with her.
Well, you know, when there's a camera tripod and then I start to pose questions, it didn't go very well.
No, she's like, hey, I've already told you know about all this stuff. Why do you keep trying?
That's a big fat no. All right. That is it for another episode of True Crime All the Time Unsolved. So for Mike
and Gibby,
stay safe and keep your own time ticking.
I love reality TV on Pluto TV.
Same, and I love that it's free.
It gives me the freedom to watch Bravo's Real Housewives Vault channel.
I'm totally free to watch Bad Girls Club.
I'm free for Jersey Shore.
Love and Hip Hop, I'm free all day.
Survivor, I'm free all night.
With hundreds of free reality shows, you are totally free to watch what you love on Pluto TV.
Pluto TV. Stream now, pay never.